Good morning, grade 9 students. In this video, we're going to make a revision for the weeks 20 and 21 about the cardiac activity. So, heart and the cardiac activity, chapter 3, activity 1. So, what is the function of the heart? We said that the heart is a muscular pump that propels and pushes the blood into all the organs in a continuous manner. The heart is divided into the left part and the right part. The left part, where the blood is oxygenated, meaning that it's rich in oxygen and it has a bright red color, whereas in the right part, it's deoxygenated, meaning that it's poor in oxygen, it has dark red color. Myocardium wall, it helps the heart to contract. These notes, you have to study them. The septum, it's the wall that separates the oxygenated blood on the left side from the deoxygenated and the right side, and it prevents its mixing, prevent the mixing of these two different parts of the heart. Cavities are the heart cavities or heart chambers. We have four: right auricle, right ventricle, left auricle, and left ventricle. We said, what is the role of the bicuspid and the tricuspid valves? Bicuspid and tricuspid valves, they allow the directional flow of the blood from the auricles down to the ventricles. And what do? They prevent the backflow. They prevent the blood going from the ventricles up to the auricles in the opposite direction. That's why it's called allow directional flow from the auricles to the ventricles, then they close. So they prevent the blood from going back from the ventricles toward the auricles. This is the role of bicuspid and tricuspid valves. Superior and inferior vena cava. Superior and inferior vena cava, they collect the deoxygenated blood from the organs toward the right auricle. The four pulmonary veins, they collect oxygenated blood from the lungs toward the left auricle. Aorta, it has an important function. It carries oxygenated blood from left ventricle to all the body organs. So the aorta has an important function. It carries oxygenated blood from the left ventricle, where it's oxygenated, to the body organs. Pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery, it carries deoxygenated blood from the right ventricles toward the lungs. This is the function of the pulmonary artery. Sigmoid valves allows unidirectional flow of the blood from where to where? From the left ventricle to the aorta, and from the right ventricle toward the pulmonary artery, and prevent the backflow of the blood from the arteries toward the ventricles. So sigmoid valve has an important function. They allow unidirectional flow from the blood from the left ventricle toward the aorta, and the aorta is going to distribute it and to from the left ventricle to all the body organs, the oxygenated one, and to the pulmonary, from the right ventricle toward the pulmonary artery, and prevent the backflow of the blood from the arteries toward the ventricles. They prevent the downward movement of the blood from the arteries toward the ventricles. This is related to the sigmoid valves. So these notes, please, you have to review them and you have to study them because they are very important. So this is the figure of the heart. What I want from you is to study this. This is for studying. You have to know the labeling of the heart. So this slide is very important. You have to study the label. I want you to study the label, and this is the figure. You have to know there is the right auricle, already we said this, and this valve is called the tricuspid valve. It's found here in the right side. Here we have the right ventricle, and we have both vena cava, inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava. Also, here we have the valves, the sigmoid valves. This is one. These are called the sigmoid valves. This for study, and you have to know them by order. You have to know. I'm going to give you, for example, a figure, and you have to fill it. You have to complete it. This is your job. So you have to study the labeling of this figure. Here we have the aorta. Here we have the pulmonary artery. These are the pulmonary veins here. This is the pulmonary veins. Here we have the left auricle. Here we have the left ventricle. And we have, this is the bicuspid. You see here, bicuspid valve is found at the left side. This is the bicuspid. While the tricuspid is found on the right side. Okay? And this is the myocardium. And you have to know that is the septum, the wall that separate the left from the right. This is the septum. So you have to study this. Okay? You can take a screenshot for this, or you can download the session and you have to study the figure here. This figure is very, 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 very important. So it's very important to study the labeling, because maybe I will give you this figure without labeling. I tell you, complete it, label the following. I give you the arrows and I will remove all the names here, and you have to know how to label it. So this is for studying. I will repeat, always this superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, this is two. Always this is one is the auricle and this is the ventricle, right auricle, right ventricle. This is left auricle, left ventricle. So you get rid of this. Sigmoid valves, here they are the sigmoid valves, okay? So here they are the sigmoid valves here in this region. You have to know that tricuspid valve is found here. This region is found in the right side, while the bicuspid is found at the left side. You have to know this is the myocardium, the muscle, and here the septum. You have to know that this part is the aorta, and this is the pulmonary artery here, and here the pulmonary veins. So you can get rid of four. Four, they are very easy. Right auricle, right ventricle. Left auricle, left ventricle. So you get rid of these. One, two, three, four. These vena cava, they are special. Superior and inferior vena cava. So you get rid of these. So you studied six till now. Okay? Tricuspid valve, it's at the right side. So you got it. Bicuspid on the left side. You got it. The aorta is found here with the three portion or three branches, let's say. So this is the aorta. So you study the aorta. Beside the aorta, what do you have? The pulmonary artery, the one in blue. So this is the pulmonary artery. And you have two branches, it's the pulmonary vein. And here are the valves that are the sigmoid valves. By this way, I can study the labeling of the heart. So labeling of the heart is very, very, very important. So now this is job. Mostly we know we studied the different parts of the heart and their locations, but we didn't move deeply into the labeling of the heart. So this week, your job is to review the labeling of the heart. Okay, guys? So now let's move to the pathway of the blood starting from the pulmonary veins. Starting from the pulmonary veins, you have to move from the pulmonary veins to the left auricle, left ventricle, to the aorta, body organ, vena cava, right auricle, right ventricle, pulmonary artery, lungs, and the pulmonary veins. Here we are starting from where? We are starting from the pulmonary veins. Sometimes I'm going to say trace the pathway starting from the left ventricle. So if we start from the pulmonary vein, we end with the pulmonary vein. Why? If I started with the left ventricle, I have to end with the left ventricle. And they should be what? In order. For example, if I started in the left ventricle, I have to start left ventricle, aorta, body organ, vena cava, right auricle, right ventricle, pulmonary artery, the lungs, pulmonary veins. Then I go back to the left auricle and the left ventricle. Okay? So you have to pay attention to these notes, and you have to know the pathway of the blood starting from where. So if you study these are very important in order. So you can start whatever you want and from which point I asked for it. Let's move now to the veins. Veins, they are the blood vessels that carry blood to the heart away from the organs. Why? The arteries, they carry blood from the heart to all body organs. All of the arteries, they have a special function. They carry oxygenated blood, except for the pulmonary artery that carries deoxygenated blood. While veins, all of them, they carry deoxygenated, except for the pulmonary vein, which carry oxygenated blood. Myocardium wall. We said that the myocardium wall is thicker around the left ventricle than that around the right. Why? Because the left ventricle, the blood, it had to be propelled to all the body organs, which need more force of contraction, so more pressure, thus propelling the blood from the right to the lines. It needs less pressure, less force of contraction. That's why on the left side it's going to be more thick, it's going to be thicker, since it needs high pressure to propel the blood to all the body organs. Moving now to the heartbeats. Heart beats in a rhythm and a periodic manner. So a heartbeat, average heart beating rate is about 70 to 75 beats per minute. So every beat takes about 60 divided by 75, 60 seconds divided by 75 beats. So approximately every heartbeat takes about zero point 0.8 seconds. These zero point 0.8 seconds, they are going to be divided into contraction and relaxation. So contraction, the heart contracts for zero point 0.4 seconds and relaxes for zero point 0.4 seconds. So cardiac activity during breathing, we said that it's zero point 0.8 seconds. They are divided either into systole or diastole. Systole, auricular systole, and ventricular systole, whereas the diastole is the general diastole. Diastole and systole, they represent contraction and relaxation respectively. For the systole, contraction, it represents zero point 0.4 seconds, while the diastole, which is the general diastole, it represents the relaxation for zero point 0.4 seconds too. Let's start with the phases of the cardiac cycle. We have the auricular systole, the ventricular systole, and the general diastole. These notes, hope you studied them the last week. So auricular systole is zero point 0.1 seconds. From its name, systole contraction. So auricular systole is the contraction of the auricles. Blood will flow from the auricles to the ventricles. So the auricles, they contract, blood will flow from the auricles down to the ventricles. Bicuspid and tricuspid valves, they open wide to allow the blood to move from the auricle to the ventricles. And the sigmoid valve, here they are closed. I repeat, auricular systole. The duration is zero point 0.1 seconds. Systole, contraction. Auricular is the auricles. So contraction of the auricles. Blood will flow from where to where? From the auricles down to the ventricles. Bicuspid and tricuspid valves, what do? They open. Why? To allow the blood to flow from the auricles down to the ventricles. While in this case, in this phase, auricular systole, the sigmoid valves, they are closed. Moving forward, ventricular systole. It's zero point 0.3 seconds. How can we know that it's zero point 0.3? Auricular systole is zero point 0.1. And all the contractions, they are zero point 0.4. And in mathematical calculation, zero point 0.4 on 0.1, it's zero point 0.3. Ventricular systole, from its name, systole, we said it's contraction. Ventricular systole, contraction of the ventricles. What will happen? The blood will flow from the ventricles either toward the pulmonary artery or the aorta. Bicuspid and tricuspid, in this case, they are closed. Why? To prevent the blood flow from toward the auricles. Okay? Bicuspid and tricuspid, they are closed, and sigmoid valves, they are open. The differences between auricular systole and ventricular systole is very easy. Let's make a comparison. Auricular systole, the auricles contract. Ventricular systole, the ventricles contract. Blood flow from auricles to ventricles were in the auricular systole, while blood flows from the ventricles toward the pulmonary and aorta and the ventricular systole. Bicuspid and tricuspid valves, they are open in the auricular systole. while in the ventricular systole they are closed. Sigmoid valve in the auricular systole they are closed, while sigmoid valves are open in the ventricular systole. Here, if you made a comparison between these two, you can easily solve the problem and can study them and memorize them easily and faster. General diastole. General diastole is about zero point 0.4 seconds. Diastole means that relaxation. So the auricles and the ventricles, they relax. The blood flow from the organs back to the auricles. Bicuspid and tricuspid valves, they open slowly but not completely. They start to open and sigmoid valves close. So this is the figure of the auricular systole. Auricular systole, ventricular systole, and others. So auricular systole, what will happen? It's zero point 0.1 seconds. What's happening here? Auricles, they contract. So whenever they contract, they will push the blood toward the ventricles. So here, contraction of the ventricles. So here, the blood will flow from the auricles toward the ventricle through the bicuspid and tricuspid valves. Moving for the second one. Second one is the ventricular systole. It's zero point 0.3 seconds. What happened here? What's special about this ventricular systole? We said that the ventricles, they contract. What happened? Sigmoid valves open and the blood is pushed toward what? Toward the aorta and toward the pulmonary artery. And here we have the closed valves. They are what? They are bicuspid and the tricuspid valves. Okay, so this is everything related to the auricular systole and the ventricular systole. So auricular systole, from its name, auricular systole, the auricles contract. So whenever they contract, they allow the flow of the blood from the auricles toward the ventricles. Okay, bicuspid and tricuspid, they are open. And the ventricular systole, it's the time zero point 0.3 seconds. What happened? The blood will move toward the aorta and toward the pulmonary artery through what? Through the sigmoid valves. Why? Bicuspid and tricuspid valve, they are what? They are closed. Bicuspid and tricuspid valve, they are closed in the ventricular systole. So here we move to the different phases of the heart. So first we have the auricular systole. The auricular systole, the auricles, they contract. I'll repeat it. Auricular systole. Auricles contract. Whenever we talk about systole, contraction. So whenever they contract, the blood will flow from the auricles down to the ventricles. Bicuspid and tricuspid, they are open. Ventricular systole, which is the second phase, number 2 here. So ventricular systole, the ventricles, they contract. So contraction of the ventricles, sigmoid valves, they open here. These are the sigmoid valves, they open, and the blood will move to the aorta and toward the pulmonary artery. And here we have the tricuspid and bicuspid valve, they are closed. So they are opposite to each other. Here, bicuspid and tricuspid valve, they are open, while sigmoid, they are closed. And the ventricular systole is the opposite. Sigmoid valve, they are open, bicuspid and tricuspid, they are closed. The last phase is the diastole. As I said before, systole, it's contraction. Diastole, it's the relaxation. So general diastole, it's the auricles and the ventricles. What do? They relax. And blood will fill the auricles and slowly will flow toward the ventricles. The sigmoid valves, they are closed. Bicuspid and tricuspid, they start to open. They are opening slowly here as shown here, not completely like the one shown in the auricular systole. So as a conclusion, we have 3 different phases for the cardiac activity: auricular systole, ventricular systole, and general diastole. This is in order. Auricular systole, the auricles contract, and the blood will flow from the auricles toward the ventricles. Bicuspid and tricuspid valves open, while the sigmoid valve, they are closed. Ventricular systole, from its name, ventricles contract and the blood will flow toward the aorta and the pulmonary artery. What we have, which valve they are open? The sigmoid valves here, they are open, while bicuspid and tricuspid, they are closed. The last phase, which is the relaxation phase, is the general diastole. It's the relaxation one. Auricles and ventricles, what do? They relax. The blood will move toward auricles again. Bicuspid and tricuspid, they open slowly, while the sigmoid, they are closed. This is everything related to the phases of the heart. We have here the blood circuit. Blood circuit, we have two different types. We have something called pulmonary circulation. Whenever we talk about pulmonary, it's related to the lungs. And whenever we talk about the systemic, we are talking about the big circulation, the general circulation. Okay? Let's move to these circuits. These notes, they are the new notes for this session. We have two types of circulation. We have the first type of circulation is called the pulmonary circulation. Pulmonary, whenever you hear the word pulmonary, so here I'm talking about the lungs. From the pulmonary artery to the pulmonary veins, the blood accomplishes what is known by the small circulation. So the small circulation, as we see in the figure, or it's called the pulmonary. The function of this circulation is to oxygenate. This is very important to know the function. Is to oxygenate the blood. What the meaning of oxygenate? To give the blood oxygen and to get rid of carbon dioxide. So it has two important functions. Oxygenate the blood and get rid of carbon dioxide. This is what's known by the pulmonary circulation. It's from the pulmonary artery to the pulmonary vein. This is the small circulation. From the pulmonary artery to the pulmonary vein, this is the small circulation here. It's called the pulmonary circulation or the small circulation. Here it is. While the big one is called the systemic. This is the bigger one. It's called the systemic circulation or it's called the general circulation. We're going to talk about this in the coming slide. So pulmonary circulation as a revision. Pulmonary circulation from the pulmonary artery to the pulmonary vein, the blood accompanies the small circulation, or what do we call it by the pulmonary? The role of the pulmonary circulation is to oxygenate the blood and to get rid of carbon dioxide. Systemic circulation. Systemic is the big circulation or the large circulation. The aorta and the two vena cava, which are the two vena cava? They are the inferior and the superior vena cava. They ensure and they did the big circulation or what's known by the systemic. What is the role of the systemic? Systemic circulation or the big circulation, it supplies every organ with the nutrients and oxygen, and it carries away all the waste product. So you have to keep it in your mind. The systemic circulation, it has an important function. It supplies every organ with the nutrients and the oxygen needed and carries away the waste. The pulmonary circulation and the systemic circulation, they form what is known by the blood circuit or the double circulation. Why it's double? Because it's pulmonary circulation and systemic. Call it double circulation or it's called the blood circuit. So I'm going to explain this again. Pulmonary circulation and systemic. Pulmonary is from the pulmonary artery to the pulmonary vein. Blood accompanies the small circulation. The function of this circulation is to oxygenate the blood and to get rid of carbon dioxide. Whereas the systemic circulation, the aorta and the two vena cava, superior and the inferior vena cava, ensure the big circulation or what's known by the systemic. Its role is to supply every organ with oxygen and the nutrients needed and to get rid of the waste. Both of them, the systemic circulation and the pulmonary circulation, they form what's known by the blood circulation, blood circuit or the double circulation.